It was a tense evening in May 2025 when White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt made a career-ending misstep. During a Fox News special focused on global leadership in the 21st century. She participated in a satellite debate with President Ibrahim Traoré, who was speaking from Ouagadougou. What began as a polite exchange on international politics quickly took a sharp turn. Tucker Carlson shifted the conversation by raising the topic of Africa's increasing role in global affairs. Karoline, how do you view the rise of young leaders, like President Traoré? He asked. Karoline responded with a confident smile that would soon be widely criticized. Tucker, let's be realistic. Ibrahim Traoré might have charm and deliver impressive speeches, but true leadership takes more than polished words. She paused, clearly preparing for a strong statement. To be honest, he's just another African strongman with a skilled PR team. He came to power through a military takeover and is now attempting to rebrand himself as a democratic figure. Then came the comment that would mark the end of her tenure. The United States cannot treat as credible any leader who gains power by overriding constitutional rule. Ibrahim Traoré is fundamentally illegitimate, and whatever success he points to is nothing more than staged propaganda aimed at a naive Western audience. A stunned silence fell over the Fox News control room. Tucker Carlson blinked repeatedly, clearly taken aback by the pointed attack. On the split screen, Ibrahim remained seated, calm, though his eyes betrayed a shift in mood. Miss Leavitt, he began, his tone calm but chilling. Thank you for revealing your real opinion. Now allow me to address what legitimacy and leadership actually mean. Back in Ouagadougou, his aides exchanged uneasy looks. They recognized that voice. Karoline Leavitt had just triggered something she wasn't ready to confront. This is going to get interesting, murmured Foreign Minister Dr. Alonso Ouedraogo from his living room. President Traoré inhaled deeply, preparing to dismantle her argument. Point by point, Ms. Leavitt, since you've questioned my legitimacy, let's go over a few facts that your research team appears to have missed. His tone remained civil, but there was a sharpness behind it. First, regarding the so-called coup, we removed a regime that had completely lost the support of its people, one that was selling off our national assets to foreign companies while 67% of our citizens lived in extreme poverty. Tucker Carlson leaned in, sensing the discussion had taken a sharp and possibly game-changing turn. Since then, we've conducted 4 free municipal elections with an 89% voter turnout, higher than any recent election in the United States, Ibrahim stated. International observers from 23 different nations have confirmed the process was completely transparent. Karoline attempted to interject, but Ibrahim firmly continued, showing his first sign of irritation over what he called fabricated narratives. Our results have been validated by the World Bank, the IMF, UNESCO, the WHO, and, interestingly, by the American government itself. Graphs prepared by Ibrahim's team appeared on screen. The data was striking. GDP had increased by 127% in just 3 years. Extreme poverty had dropped from 67% to 23%. Infant mortality was down by 58%, and the literacy rate had jumped from 34% to 81%. These statistics come directly from U.S. agencies. Mrs. Leavitt, are you suggesting your own government is lying? Karoline looked visibly uneasy. Well, numbers can be presented in ways that support a narrative. You're welcome to visit Burkina Faso and verify them yourself, Ibrahim offered with a frosty smile. Unlike you, I have no fear of presenting real results to international review, Ibrahim pressed on. And speaking of questioning legitimacy, how many votes did President Trump lose by before taking office? How often has America's electoral system ignored the majority? Karoline's silence was growing increasingly uncomfortable, and Ibrahim was just getting started. He leaned in slightly and began to shift his approach with deliberate precision. Let's look beyond the data, Ms. Leavitt. Let's talk about leadership versus showmanship. He gestured to a set of documents on his desk. In the last 3 years, I've built 2,247 schools, 73 hospitals, and 340 community health centers. We've established a universal healthcare system that now serves 94% of our citizens. Compare that to the US, where 45,000 people die each year due to lack of access to healthcare, and 37 million still live in poverty. Your infrastructure is deteriorating. Karoline attempted to push back. But America is much larger and far more complex. Exactly, Ibrahim said, finally allowing a smile. The US has a budget 200 times the size of ours. If that. Much wealth can't fix basic issues. What does that say about your leadership? Tucker Carlson appeared genuinely intrigued. President Traoré, those are very pointed comparisons. They need to be made, Mr. Carlson. If someone questions my legitimacy while their own system repeatedly fails its people, then such comparisons are more than fair. Ibrahim turned his focus back to Karoline. Miss Leavitt, you called me a dictator. Let's explore that claim. Dictators imprison their critics. We have an independent press that critiques me daily. Dictators rig elections. Ours are internationally monitored. Dictators live lavishly. I receive a government salary and donate 60% of it to education. And lastly, Ibrahim paused, letting the silence build. Dictators use propaganda to discredit others just as you have done. Karoline now looked visibly shaken. That's not a fair assessment. Truth rarely is, Ibrahim responded coolly. Especially when it reveals the double standards of those pointing fingers while ignoring the flaws in their own system. But I'm not done addressing your accusations, Miss Leavitt, he added, now shifting toward his final point. Since legitimacy is your concern, perhaps we should take a closer look at American efforts to destabilize democratically elected African governments. Government documents flashed on the screen and Karoline's face turned pale. The words, Operation Sahel Interference, appeared. I have files from 2024 revealing that $67 million had been allocated to disrupt African governments, including Ibrahim's own. Tucker Carlson looked stunned. President, are these documents real? They've been verified by intelligence agencies from 6 allied nations, Ibrahim confirmed. Ms. Leavitt represents an administration that spent $67 million trying to topple democratically elected African governments. So when you talk about legitimacy, he continued, you mean from the standpoint of a government that actively works to remove leaders who don't align with American interests? Karoline attempted to deflect. I don't know anything about these operations. Of course not, Ibrahim replied dryly. A press secretary wouldn't be briefed on covert destabilization missions. But since you're speaking for this administration, maybe you can explain why the U.S. invests tens of millions in removing African leaders who actually uplift their people. He leaned in slightly. Is it because our progress highlights the shortcomings of the American model? That small nations can accomplish more with fewer resources than corrupt superpowers? Karoline now appeared visibly emotional. Please, this is going too far. Too far? Ibrahim echoed with disbelief. You called me an illegitimate dictator on global television, and I'm the one going too far by responding with facts? He continued, you represent a government that spends billions trying to dominate Africa. But when a young African leader speaks out, suddenly I'm the one stepping out of bounds? Tucker tried to intervene. Perhaps we should. No. Ibrahim interrupted firmly. Ms. Leavitt wanted to talk about legitimacy. Let's finish that conversation. Ibrahim then chose to deliver a final blow that would erase any last trace of Karoline's credibility. But there's something more. Ms. Leavitt, something personal that might explain your hostility toward my leadership. He paused, letting the moment build. Your family holds shares in Greystone Mining Corporation, a company that lost $2.3 billion in mining rights after I renegotiated contracts to favor the people of Burkina Faso over American investors. Karoline's face went ghostly. How do you know that? Because unlike you, Ibrahim said with a cold smile, I do my research before making public claims. Financial records show that your parents are listed shareholders. $340,000 in Greystone stock. Your anger isn't really about democracy, it's about family wealth. You're attacking me because my policies have reduced your family's profits. That's a serious conflict of interest and it should have been disclosed. Tucker Carlson appeared stunned. Karoline, is that true? Karoline had started to cry. I don't control my parents' investments. But you do control what you say, Ibrahim responded coldly. And you chose to use your public role to personally criticize a foreign leader, one whose decisions impacted your family's finances. That's not diplomacy, Mrs. Leavitt. That's a personal vendetta disguised as foreign policy. So when you speak about legitimacy, what you're really defending is the right to use public office to protect private wealth. This is the real face of American politics officials using power to safeguard personal gain while pointing fingers at others for corruption. Karoline was now visibly shaken, crying without restraint. Please stop. Why should I? Ibrahim asked. You began by questioning my legitimacy. Now it's clear your motivations were rooted in personal interest. This is what happens when African leaders are underestimated. Mrs. Leavitt, we are no longer easy targets for outdated imperial narratives. The studio fell completely silent as Karoline continued to sob. Ibrahim prepared to deliver the final blow words that would mark this moment as a turning point. But there's one last irony, Mrs. Leavitt, he said, his voice now commanding and resolute, and it perfectly captures the contradiction at the heart of American politics. While you accuse me of being an illegitimate dictator, classified documents reveal that the CIA has made 3 attempts to assassinate me over the past 2 years, Ibrahim stated calmly. Tucker Carlson looked visibly stunned. Operation Termination? Alpha authorized by the very government you represent. 3 assassination attempts on a democratically elected president, because my policies threaten the profits of American corporations. So, when you question my legitimacy, remember you're speaking for a government actively targeting African leaders who refuse to align with its interests. Karoline began breathing heavily. I wasn't aware. Ignorance doesn't excuse complicity, Ibrahim responded without emotion. When you use your official platform to discredit the targets of US-backed assassination attempts, you are part of the problem, whether you realize it or not. This is the true nature of American foreign policy. When they fail to control leaders like me, they resort to eliminating us, then send their spokespersons to label us illegitimate. Ms. Leavitt, your administration has poured $67 million into destabilization efforts, attempted to assassinate me 3 times, and now dares to question my right to lead? Looking directly into the camera, Ibrahim continued, America, look at your foreign policy for what it is, assassination plots against democratically elected officials, followed by coordinated smear campaigns from officials with deep financial conflicts of interest. And when we respond with facts, suddenly we are accused of crossing the line? Karoline, visibly shaken, removed her microphone and walked off the set in silence. Ibrahim closed with a stark message. This is the contrast between genuine leadership and political performance. Real leaders confront the truth while corrupt politicians flee once exposed. Tucker Carlson sat speechless, clearly aware he had just witnessed one of the most devastating political moments ever broadcast live. Within minutes of Karoline Leavitt's on-air collapse, global social media ignited. Hashtags like #KarolineDestroyed, #TroorEtruth, and #Sia assassination plot began trending at record speed. Millions of posts flooded the internet every minute. Holy Traoré just dismantled Karoline Leavitt live on TV. CIA tried to kill African president, then sent their press secretary to defame him. Karoline broke down when Ibrahim called out her family's ties to media money. At Fox News headquarters, executives scrambled to contain the fallout. Pull all reruns, shouted the executive producer. Prepare a network-wide emergency. Statement. Back at the White House, Trump had been watching the broadcast. What the hell was that? He barked at aides. How did they let this African leader destroy Karoline on national TV? She provoked him, sir, the chief of staff said, scrambling for an explanation. We had no idea he had those documents. Documents? Trump exploded. He exposed CIA operations, assassination attempts? How did he even get this intel? At CIA headquarters in Langley, emergency protocols were activated. We have a major national security breach, the acting director announced. Ibrahim Traoré has access to top-secret missions. But bipartisan outrage erupted in Congress. lawmakers from both sides of the aisle demanded swift investigations. If these assassination attempts on an elected leader are true, that's a war crime, a Democratic senator declared. We need full accountability. Major news outlets launched immediate investigations. Teams from the Washington Post and the New York Times were dispatched to verify Ibrahim's claims of U.S.-led destabilization and assassination plots. If even half of what he said checks out, said the Post's editor. This is the most explosive scandal in modern U.S. political history. Karoline Leavitt had locked herself in her home, silencing her phone and refusing media inquiries. Her political career had unraveled in a matter of minutes undone by a young African leader she had gravely underestimated. She mistook a lion for a house cat, a political analyst remarked. Ibrahim Traoré has just reshaped the landscape of international diplomacy. Within 48 hours of the broadcast, Congress convened emergency intelligence hearings. The leaked documents were authenticated, confirming every one of Ibrahim's allegations regarding attempted assassinations and covert destabilization. Operations were underway. Mr. Director Senator Chuck Schumer demanded answers. Documents reveal 3 sanctioned assassination attempts on President Traoré. How do you explain this? The acting CIA director hesitated. Senator, I can neither confirm nor deny that. You can't? The Republican senator snapped. Assassination attempts on an allied leader aren't political strategies, they're acts of war. The evidence was compelling. Internal CIA emails discussing the permanent neutralization of Ibrahim, financial records of payments made to contracted killers, and detailed blueprints for 3 unsuccessful missions. A sitting U.S. administration had approved assassination efforts against a democratically elected foreign president. This goes beyond Watergate, a horrified Democratic congressman declared. This is murder in the name of empire. The investigation revealed even more. Karoline was partially informed about the anti-Traoré operations but still chose to publicly denounce him, according to a whistleblower from the NSA. Karoline had been briefed on confidential operations in Burkina Faso. She was aware that Ibrahim was targeted. The whistleblower said, yet she chose to vilify him on national television. Trump sought to detach himself from the scandal. I never authorized any assassination efforts. The CIA acted independently. But documents told a different story. His signature appeared on multiple authorization orders. The president lied to Congress and to the American people. The Speaker of the House announced, impeachment proceedings begin tomorrow. Meanwhile, President Traoré received calls from world leaders expressing outrage and solidarity. France unequivocally condemns these U.S. attempts on your life, Macron assured him. Europe stands firmly with Burkina Faso. Putin was more direct. America has shown its true nature, a state that eliminates democratically elected leaders. China offered security support, emphasizing that Traoré had protected their economic interests by renegotiating mining deals fairly. We stand by our allies. Their statement read. Ibrahim Traoré transformed Karoline's political attack into a global diplomatic reckoning that left the United States isolated on the world stage. Within a week of his disclosures, the U.S. faced an unprecedented diplomatic backlash. 47 nations condemned the assassination plots, 23 expelled American diplomats, and the African Union officially cut diplomatic ties. The U.S. has forfeited its moral authority, declared the president. We do not engage with governments that target elected leaders for elimination. With impeachment looming, Trump scrambled to regain control of the narrative. Traoré forged the documents. It's all fake news. There were no assassination attempts, but the mounting evidence was impossible to dismiss. Whistleblowers from the CIA, NSA, and Pentagon came forward, confirming every claim. President Traoré told the absolute truth, a former CIA operative testified. We attempted to kill him 3 times because he wouldn't bow to U.S. corporate interests. Karoline now faced criminal prosecution for abusing her position to publicly defame a foreign leader targeted by illegal American operations. A federal prosecutor declared. She knew enough to be considered an accomplice, using a government position. To target someone marked for assassination was labeled obstruction of justice, but what came next was even more consequential. Nations around the world began shifting their alliances in droves. Ibrahim Traoré, having survived US-backed assassination attempts, revealed the truth to the global community. "The man has the kind of courage America lacks," remarked the president of Brazil. Even long-standing allies began expressing doubt. "How can we trust a country that tries to assassinate leaders and then denies it?" asked the Canadian Prime Minister. Meanwhile, Ibrahim emerged as a symbol of global resistance. Universities awarded him honorary degrees. The Nobel Committee even considered creating a special peace prize in recognition of his survival and advocacy for peaceful resolution of conflict. President Traoré demonstrated that truth is the strongest weapon, wrote an editorialist. In The Guardian, just one televised interview had done more to undermine America's credibility than any act of warfare. In a final turn, polls showed that 73% of Americans supported both Trump's impeachment and the prosecution of officials tied to the attempted assassination. "Our own citizens have turned on us," whispered a Trump aide. Ibrahim Traoré didn't just bring down Karoline, he dismantled an entire imperial strategy, said a political analyst. The global balance of power shifted. Trump was impeached and faced criminal charges for authorizing the assassination and misusing public office for personal revenge. Meanwhile, Ibrahim, now seen as the world's most respected leader, delivered a historic address to the UN General Assembly, viewed by over 2 billion people, the largest UN audience in history. 6 months ago, an American official called me an illegitimate dictator, he began. Today he received a standing ovation. Now the world sees who truly threatens democracy. His speech unveiled the African Renaissance Initiative, a collaborative effort between all 54 African nations to break dependency on former colonial powers. "We've shown that Africa doesn't need America's approval to succeed," he declared. His leadership highlighted the failures of the West, while China, Russia, and Europe scrambled to secure new partnerships with the continent. "Africa is a partner, not a colony," affirmed the Chinese premier. American corporations lost trillions in contracts as African nations cut ties. Greystone Mining, Karoline's family business, collapsed after every African country terminated its agreements. Karoline targeted Ibrahim to protect her family's fortune, observed a financial analyst. But instead, she destroyed the very company she sought to save. In a powerful gesture, Ibrahim founded the Karoline Leavitt Institute for the Study of Diplomatic Failure at the University of Ouagadougou. She taught the world a valuable lesson: never underestimate Africa, Ibrahim said at the dedication. Her name will stand as a reminder to future diplomats: never mistake arrogance for ability. Trump, awaiting trial in federal prison, gave a rare interview. "That African kid ruined everything with just one TV interview. I've never misjudged anyone worse." Karoline, now serving an 8-year sentence, declined to comment. But insiders say she watched Ibrahim's Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech from prison tears streaming down her face as he said, "Sometimes, our greatest enemies give us our greatest gifts." Karoline Leavitt tried to bring him down. Instead, she helped elevate his platform. "I'm forever grateful," he concluded. The world had learned. Never underestimate a young African leader who fights back with truth.